Thank you so much. Hi there, and welcome back to Muppet Fans Talking. I'm your host, Marcelo Vataro, and I am still here in the beautiful, beautiful land of Australia, where I got to interview my friend Brett from Lara King Puppets. And today I'm meeting up with another friend of mine, well-known TikToker, puppeteer, goes by the name of, I believe, Ghostbusters GB. I'm here today with Mr. Toby Cheffins. Toby, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Marcelo, and I hate to do this to you. I got to fact check you already because it's Ghost Puppet, not Ghostbusters.
Okay. I mean, I kind of figured it was either or.
I was just so perfect, like, well-known TikToker, goes by the name of, are you Tony Steak?
Oh man, that's. I mean,
you are half right because the reason why I became Ghost Puppet GB, everyone thinks at first that I'm from Great Britain or something like that, but it's actually because when I chose that name, it was because I was a cosplayer first, and my signature one was always to Ghostbust or Puppeteer. So the GB after Ghost Puppet actually does stand for Ghostbuster.
Well, little fun history right there.
Correct.
Well, of course, I checked that page. I checked out your page on Facebook way before, long before you and I got to connect, along with the other TikTok and Instagrammer puppeteers. But we're gonna get to that later on in the show. But Toby, thank you so much for joining me today for Muppet Fans Talking.
I'm very happy to take part in this, man. Thank you so much for shuffling your schedule a little bit to meet me halfway. That was great of you.
That's my pleasure. I mean, I had went through the same process with Brett when I invited him on the show. And of course, me being from New York and you guys being from Australia, of course, time zones are very different, but we did manage to make it work, and I'm glad with how things turned out.
Brett is a very busy and very, very engaging person. He is fantastic to talk to.
Absolutely. I mean, he shared so many stories of how he got started and his success up to now, which we are going to get to you on that one right now in the show. But right off the bat, knowing that, with how things are going on in the world now, with lockdowns and quarantines, kind of a rhetorical question because I've seen a lot of your work. What are you currently working on right now?
Right now I'm actually on a bit of a hiatus, actually, because I had a point at the start of March where I just had a plateau, I guess you'd say, of my connection with a lot of people on my page, because though I have a high turnover of people watching, I don't have a great engagement rate. So I'm trying to rethink about things right now, like how to actually feed more comments, more questions, and the Q&A factor of TikTok. I'm trying to work on that a bit better right now. So just theorizing. I was actually meant to do a collaboration with another TikToker, friend Kat, but yeah, she's having a bit of a slump as well. So we both were like, you know what, we both want to come back. We'll then start making this collaboration video with one of my puppets and her as a teacher character.
Oh, oh, sorry.
No, sorry, what were you saying?
No. I thought you were going to continue on, and then I'd come in with the next comment.
Not a problem. No, I ramble a lot, so you might have to rank me a bit.
Oh, you know what? This podcast is definitely made for rambling. So whatever stories or things that you are going to share with us today, it's all warranted and it's completely unedited. So we're gonna have a good time.
Yeah, sad to say is that I've actually taken a bit of a step back because I literally had, for puppeteering and stuff like that, I've had one of the most annoying stop-start relationship with this year because I went from losing my voice, so I couldn't do any lip syncs or anything like that, or duet sing-alongs on TikTok. As I just healed that, I got the cold, and again lost my voice straight away, and just absolutely was like, "Hello, how are you doing today?" Just could not speak. And then just as I recovered that enough to go, yes, I can start filming again, I shut my hand in a car door, and I've had black and blue all through my my left hand, so I couldn't do anything with glove puppets. I'm just there going like, okay, someone's trying to tell me to stop engaging. It's just been this persevering, like, you know what? I need to take a break just to assess why the universe is telling me to stop right now.
Those are very unfortunate incidences that occurred for you, and well, one, I'm very glad that you're feeling a lot better from your cold, and I do hope your hand goes down after the large swelling from what you just described.
This is all the beginning of March. It was just a thing of like, it was week after week something came up. That was a thing of like, no, you can't start now. It just had that kind of calamity of slapstick, and I just was like, this would be some kind of weird tragedy in the 70s.
Oh my! Wow, that
well,
is
a... You seem a bit of a cough there. What's happening with you?
No, just something in my throat. Frog. Anyway, okay, back to. Appropriate seeing how this is called Muppet Fans Talking. Anyway, back to the program. So of course, I've seen a lot of your work way before you and I got connected via Instagram and TikTok, but let's go all the way back to your high interest in puppetry and what you did way before that. So how did you get started?
Well, for me, unlike you, because I know you've gone to a lot of workshops, and you've gone to a lot of like practice days, stuff like that in New York. I know you've done a lot of those kind of circuits. We don't really have that kind of thing in Australia. It's very much a matter of you play, you throw things at a wall, and just work with what sticks. And Brent, as you have already talked to, he's actually travelled to America to do extra studies from the Sesame workshops and other stuff like that. And what was the other one that you guys did? It was like one of the ones in New York that was like I can't remember what it was called.
You mean the one with me and Brett? I think that was.
The kitchen, something like that, what was it called?
Yeah, yes, the Puppet Kitchen. The Puppet Kitchen, yes.
That's the one.
Yes.
Sadly, nothing like that really exists in Australia as yet, because it's not really an art form that is explored that thoroughly in Australia. It's one of those weird and bizarre things of like, we all love it, but no one pursues it. And I don't know if that's a heat or something like that, who knows. But my love of puppetry really does stem from a lot of stuff that came out in the 80s, the reruns of the 70s, and all the stuff in between. So when there was a bit of resurgence here and there with the Jason Segel Muppet movies, I just doubled down, and it was like thing of like, let's not have a plushie on the corner, let's actually have a puppet. I found FAO Schwartz was doing the Muppet Whatnots, and I bought one on impulse because I found a loophole where I could get the puppet made online. They would then free post it to anyone in America, which I then posted to a friend of mine who lived in Kansas, who then forwarded it on to me, and that was my first Whatnot, which was Alan, little blue Muppet I had with purple hair that doesn't come on TikTok anymore because I think I got him back in 2011. And yeah, I actually took him out to conventions as like a +2 at a Supernova or a Comic-Con kind of event. So yeah, I just started playing around with that. So I did a lot more roaming puppetry, I guess it's called. So I just kept working at it. I started putting a camera in front of me and just looked at the playback, practiced, and just played with my OCD to a certain extent where, not officially OCD, but you just look at the playback and go, okay, that looks wrong. Why is that? Why does that not look to the grade? Because I always look at myself and go, okay, I want to strive for this. What is the difference in them and what to look for? And I just kept playing with that and just kept throwing things at the wall until I was like, yes, I like how that moved. I liked how this puppet walked off or walked back on. Double checking that I moved my thumb, not my forefingers, to make his mouth open and close. Just little things like that. And just ground that until I was happy. And because I was going to conventions, I got a few puppets like a Kermit the Frog, because in cosplay, you just play with the characters that inspired you and your fandom. So I went to, I think it was 2014, sorry. I went to a pop culture event where I actually had my first Kermit the Frog puppet, and I had him done up in Sesame Street newscaster costume with a fake microphone and everything in his hand, and I was literally pretending to interview people at the convention as Kermit the Frog from Sesame Street News. So I was doing all, hi, Kermit the Frog here from Sesame Street News, and right now I'm talking to, what's your name? Logan. Oh, Logan, you're from the X-Men, aren't you? And just played it like that, and just kept going back and forth with people. And I genuinely enjoyed it. Everyone kept breaking down because of it, because I was doing the Steve Whitmire style of the voice, and yeah, it was just a very big fun time. I just kept exploring it over and over again until suddenly I just went like, you know what, maybe just not do just cosplay and puppetry on Facebook and Instagram. And I just, during the pandemic, thought, let's give TikTok a go and just use it as a way to practice monitor puppetry. And that's why I jumped onto TikTok, was just to practice and do more. And yeah, I found a slew of people who just had the same spark of silliness and just joined the community from there.
That's great. And, you know, the way that you lip sync and duet with a lot of your puppets. Well, one, you have a Fraggle puppet, which, you know, anytime I see a Fraggle, it just warms my heart, because out of all the shows that Jim Henson ever worked on, you know, being Sesame Street or the Muppet Show, Fraggle Rock was definitely one of those shows that I really love so much, especially the different variety and style, shapes, colors of all the Fraggles. They just look like incredible, engaging characters. And so when I saw yours, that definitely led me to go, yeah, this guy, yeah, he really has a love for Fraggles. So that's, you know,
it's really one of those shows that you were lucky to be a kid when that was on TV. It was 100% what I feel, because everyone I know that knows Fraggle Rock loves it. Even the people I've introduced to it recently, they loved it. And it's one of the things that doesn't get mentioned. It's one of really the first Jim Henson productions that, like, unlike the Muppet Show or Sesame Street, where there's a lot of sketches, there's a lot of guest stars, and there's a lot of segments that go towards like a ensemble kind of show, like an SNL kind of thing. Fraggle Rock was the first structured story of an ongoing series that had a continuing story in the background. And I think that's one of the more endearing parts about it, is you felt like you were going on the story with them, and it was an engaging story as well. And the musical numbers just absolutely cement the show as being a memory in your head that will never go away.
Exactly. I mean, as much as I continue to have huge love and passion for the Muppet Show and Sesame Street, Fraggle Rock was definitely one of those shows that wasn't a typical variety show or a typical preschool morning show teaching you the ABCs and the 1, 2, 3s. It really did feel like it was a show that involved a lot of stories and a bunch of different characters, as well as topics. But we're gonna get more into Fraggle Rock later on into the show. Let me just see over here. So you know what? We're actually gonna segue right back into Fraggle Rock. Which the next question I got for you, seeing as though we're talking about Muppets and how much they've inspired us and how much these characters we connect with, kind of a silly question because we already touched on it, on the type of characters we love. Which Muppet?
Go for it.
Which Muppet do you connect with the most? Whether it be Sesame Street, Muppet Show, of course, Fraggle Rock falls into that category. But for you, Toby,
that's the one I always feel changes, and that's one of those weird and bizarre things, because everyone usually goes like, "Oh, it's Beaker, it's animal and stuff like that," and but everyone, it always has changed to everyone every time. Because I have my core favorite characters of every series, and I relate to them so much. Like, Wembley is forever me as a Fraggle. I'll never unsay that, because just the bumbling anxiety of, did you do this the right way, or do I start before it? Like, just the dichotomy of him getting out on the wrong side of the bed on a bed that only has one side to get out of, and just that notion of how he overthinks it. That is 100% me when learning something new for the first time. But characters I relate to in that regard, I fall into later generation Gonzo, I guess you'd say, because I like to say that there's like 3 to 4 phases of Gonzo's life that we can relate to, because the struggling artist who just is never understood and just feels absolutely stepped on because he can never relate to anyone in that regard. The extreme, like, high energy Gonzo that was the death-defying daredevil. Then you have the executive producer and segment line creator for Muppets Tonight, going into just always a character looking back on what he did in his past and saying, should I go back to it again? Because he was in the Muppets ABC show. Like, it's very hard, because every time they approach a character, there's a new element to their life brought out, and you relate to him for a different reason. And just, I'm gonna say Rolf.
No, you know what? You know that's a solid answer, because for me as well, Wembley, Wembley's also one of my favorites on Fraggle Rock. I mean, I have a few myself. Wembley, Cantus the Minstrel, Mudwell the Mud Bunny, played by Richie Hunt, and
that one episode character, it was so crazy seeing him on Muppet Treasure Island, wasn't it?
It was actually, fun fact, a lot of those puppets that were used in Fraggle Rock, so Mudwell the Mud Bunny, Bagooney the Magic Rabbit. There was an episode where Mookie finds this rabbit type character, and he shrinks her down.
I remember it. It's so funny.
Yes, a lot of those kind of puppets, I believe later they were rebuilt for a UK production, and to which, when they were doing Christmas Carol and Treasure Island, they used those characters for the movies.
That's really cool. I didn't know they actually rebuilt them. I just thought it's like, these are still fresh, they're still good to go.
Honestly, with those kind of puppets, they do tend to wear out. The foam tends to decay, and oftentimes they would need to fix them, or they just need to start from scratch and just rebuild them again. Which honestly, for me, it kind of shows that those kind of puppets are great actors as well.
Actors like everyone else, that's the truth.
Exactly, because you see them on Fraggle Rock, and then you see them go to, I believe the show is called Muppet Top Shop. I think it was a show in the UK, but they go from there to Christmas Carol, to Treasure Island, and those are Jim Henson production puppets. And this is actually the question that kind of gets me. If you remember the film Happy Time Murders, they used a bunch of recycled puppets from other Jim Henson productions. So there were some that I remembered. There was a show called Animal Jam that aired here in the U.S. It came on Discovery Kids. There were... they just had like a bunch of random puppets for the improv show Puppet Up Uncensored, to which they used in the film. I always thought, well, you know what? You use those puppets from Fraggle Rock. You use those puppets in Treasure Island and Christmas Carol. How come you didn't use those for Happy Time?
I think that was one of the big, like the back and forth trying to make Happy Time Murders. I think there's a lot to be said about what kind of hoops and guidelines they had to avoid being caught in red tape. Because if you remember, there was so much backlash that came out of the first trailer for the movie that actually finally got greenlit and released. Because though it said that it was directed by Brian Henson, and it said from the people who made Sesame Street and The Muppet Show, actually did have a grievance against them because they were using the namesake of Sesame Street to promote the movie, and they had a big falling out because of that trailer.
Right.
Because you put Sesame Street's name to an R-rated red band trailer. It was that thing of like, why are you doing that?
I will say that I will say this. I will say this. It for me, I thought that trailer, the first trailer for Happy Time, I thought it was very humorous. I thought it was very funny because this movie was showing that, you know, this isn't Sesame Street, this isn't the Muppets, although Brian Henson did direct the movie. And and a few days later, someone sent me a message on Facebook saying, "Oh, did you hear about Happy Time?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm excited for the movie." No, they're getting sued by Sesame Workshop. I'm like, "What?"
They weren't going to get sued.
That's how they word it to me.
This is the funny thing that I always think is the unfair thing to puppetry as an art form is the number of random people that who know me being the puppet person in my town. A lot of people came to me and said the facts like, "What do you feel about this? What do you feel about this movie with Happy Time Murders?" And it was a thing of like, "Oh, you're looking forward to it. Why would they do this? I mean, why would they make puppetry for adults?" And I'm like, "It's always been for adults." Because everyone has this stigma that puppetry is for kids. And it's funny how people just adopt that and say that is the norm as it should be. Like, I was just there going like, "Do you have a problem with puppets being used for this kind of raunchy kind of thing for adults?" And I'm like, "No, this is not the first time it's happened either, so you're behind the eight ball on so many levels right now." Because anyone who argues the notion that said, "Oh, you can't do Happy Time Murders, you can't have a red band movie just for puppets," I'm going like, "Have you seen Meet the Feebles?" It's like, that is the first thing I have to say to people. And it's a thing of like, dude, what rock are you under if you think that is the first step?
I'm with you.
And this is the thing I have to say when it comes to Happy Time Murders. I wish it went that far as Meet the Feebles.
Oh.
That's the best way I can describe it, because, no, don't get me wrong, Meet the Feebles went too far in many ways.
It did.
Don't get me wrong.
People.
Third act. That was a third act. Like,
People, if you have not seen Meet the Feebles at all, definitely check it out. It is the second film done by Peter Jackson. Yes, Mr. Peter Jackson.
The first one was Undead. And so it's just like, like, this is a guy that, this is the movie's director. Because if you haven't seen Undead, it has like 2 different titles in different countries. But if you haven't seen it, it is the only film I will give had more squibs and blood splatter effects in a zombie movie than a Sam Raimi Evil Dead. Like, it out blood splattered that, because literally there's a sequence where there's a zombie hand chasing someone, and they literally grab the hand and put it into a blender and puree it. And there's another scene where the guy's being chased by so many zombies, he grabs a lawnmower, like the spinning blade one, and is holding it chest high, and is just running down the stairs with it on, just pureeing an entire row of zombies down the staircase. Like, this is absolute splatterfest at its finest. And then he goes on to make a puppet movie. At a theater.
I'm glad that you brought up that, people often think that puppets are only meant for children, because I have that same problem. For me, let's reconcile with this one. Many people years ago, they would tend to say that animation, like cartoon animation or just animated films like Shrek or Pixar, those kind of movies were only meant for children, right?
It's aggravating at the best of times.
With that, there has been an enormous shift over the years where not only with television animation, feature film animation can also gear towards an R-rated adult audience. Same thing with puppetry. Like, people already know that animation can do a lot more. I personally do feel like the puppetry that we do, traditional hand style puppets, or if people want to get down to the technical term, Muppet style puppetry, that kind of style of puppets can do a lot more. It's not only geared towards children.
No, 100%. And this is a thing that, even going back to when Sesame Street started, one of the things that was really good about it was that, yes, they had the market for young adult, like children and infants, as being an education thing for them. But the way they approached it, even back then, is that, yes, it's for that demographic, but it's not so much focused on only them that parents who have to watch along with them don't upchuck into the sink, as the saying was, because it was accessible for adults to watch it as well and not be turned off, if that makes sense. So the target market for even shows like that is for multiple generations. And when Muppet Show came out, which was Sex and Violence and all the rest of that kind of stuff, the original working title for it,
Yep.
there was a lot of push to say, no, this is for adults. And when you can think about the fact that when Jim Henson started with Sand and Friends, he was in high school still. He was a teenager. And I love the fact that he went to his prom in his own purchased Rolls Royce from the money he made from Sand and Friends. But when you consider the fact that the demographic that he was making that show for were older than him, and that's never said enough, is the fact that he made a show that was for late night TV viewing for parents. So people in their 30s were watching a show that was made by a teenager. So it's that level of just, where do we go wrong in the notion of pigeonholing puppetry as an art form? And as you said, with animation as well, there are so many films that you need. If a kid watches movies from the 80s is a plethora of, yes, you need to have a parent watching this kid's movie with you. There is a plethora of those out there. I mean, what was it? Cool City and stuff like that, which was almost a homage to Roger Rabbit, which had Brad Pitt and all the rest of it in that.
Cool World. Cool World by Ralph Bakshi.
That's the one.
Yeah.
You just think, it's got animation, gets kids to watch it. I remember renting that as a kid because I saw the animation on the front, thought, kids movie, because cartoons. I saw something that looked like Roger Rabbit. So I went to a Blockbuster, picked up the VHS, went home and went, what the hell am I watching, man? It just happened. And it's just one of those bizarre things. And I think one of the best things that ever came out of the 80s and 90s was the notion that people were purchasing the rights to movies that were for adults and making it into kids' shows. And everyone's got a story of one of those shows where you watch the cartoon, see the movie on the shelf, and go, oh, this was the one that they made the show with. Because nothing says that more than the Toxic Crusaders and then finding the Toxic Avenger movie series. Because, oh god, that was a learning curve going to Tremorville movies.
I'm sorry. People were buying this is the first time I'm hearing this. People were buying the rights to movies that were, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, R-rated, and then they turned them into kid shows.
Well, do you remember the Toxic Crusaders? Do you remember that cartoon?
No, because I've never heard of it, nor have I ever seen it up until this interview.
Okay, back in the heyday of 90s Ninja Turtles, where you had that being the juggernaut of kids' cartoons for making toy commercials,
right.
A lot of people made other shows to try and compete with that in the same kind of model.
Oh,
you had things like Boys from Mars coming out. You had things like Extreme Dinosaurs. You had Street Sharks and other stuff like that. There were so many of those kind of anthropomorphic animal mutants that were fighting crime and stuff like that were coming out of the woodwork. Another one that came out, which had like a one-series wonder, if I'm not mistaken, was Toxic Crusaders. And it's all about a guy who fell into a vat of toxic waste and became this mutant that was generally overstrong and overpowered. But because he was being pranked by someone else, he was a janitor at a sports rec center. Pardon me, I'm losing my voice a little bit.
It's okay.
But long story short, the show itself was a very environmentally, like, saving kind of grace. We had this green mutant that looked like Hunchback of Notre Dame with the eyes off-centered kind of thing. Had a mop for a weapon. His name was Toxie. And he had a heap of friends who helped him fight crime, but he lived in the dump because no one wanted to be the neighbor of this creature. And his girlfriend was a blind girl, and all this kind of stuff. But the funny thing is that I saw that cartoon, I liked it because it reminded me of Turtles and all that kind of stuff there, and it had an environmental message of preventing toxic waste dumping and stuff like that. And that was one of the key things this show was talking about.
Wait.
On a school holiday one time, I then went to my local video store, and I saw a VHS tape, which was the Toxic Avenger 2, and was everyone like, what? And I saw Toxie as a human actor with the mop in hand, everything, going, oh my god, this is the same character. They made a movie like him, just like Ninja Turtles did a live-action movie back in 1990. And I thought, they made a cartoon, they made a movie. What I didn't know is the Toxic Avenger is a movie series that is R-rated. Keeping in mind, these are very, like, Z-grade horror action movie kind of things. And the guys who make these films, oh my god, do not eat. If it's your first viewing of one of the Tromaville movies, do not have a full meal before you start. Just putting it out there, especially if you watch Birdemic. But I'll get into that a bit later if you want. But what it was is that I rented this movie thinking it was a continuation story to the cartoon, and then found out that this is the movie that inspired them to purchase the rights to make a cartoon accessible for children, because they found a way of making that marketable for kids, being gross out toys. And to say that Toxic Avenger is a violent movie, I'm talking now about the first one, all the events of his origin story of him falling in a vat of toxic waste whilst as a janitor, that's all the same. But it is R-rated because there is sex scenes in this movie, there is blood and gore complete. Like, there is a sequence, because when Toxie gets a sense of people being angry or violent or breaking the law, his mind sees red and he can't stop himself from taking out the injustice. And the first time he does that, he goes to a mugging gone wrong, where a cop's almost killed by a heap of street thugs. And there is blood effects and everything like in these movies as well, so they don't play light. And he literally, to beat them, he beats them to a point where it's worse than the RoboCop parody of shooting the guy's dick off. He literally gouges his eyes out, and they have a fake head, and they actually push the eyes all the way in. And I'm just there going like, oh, as a young kid, I'm just there going like, oh, we're playing now. There is one sequence where he literally guillotines a guy's head in a gym with the bench press. And they do full prosthetic blood makeup so that his head was crushed, but the jawline's still moving because it's still, nervous system's still moving. And it's just this thing of like, what did I rent as a kid?
What?
You're just freaking out.
Wait, I actually do remember seeing that movie now. Because the guy that directed Shrek 2, Monsters vs. Aliens, and Sausage Party with Seth Rogen, I saw an article that he was planning to remake that movie as a full-length animated film.
Yes! I would buy that!
And I saw that he wanted to remake that movie. And I thought, wait, what is this? And so I had to, I dig deep. People, when I come across something I've never seen before, I dig deep into this. And when I saw the full movie, oh my god! Helpful advice. Thankfully, I did not have a full stomach. But the whole thing, I'm watching this, jaw dropped, and at the very end, I'm going, "This is the movie Conrad Vernon wants to make." If he is, I'm all for it. He did a movie with Seth Rogen. He'll probably do another one. I'm all for it.
If you've heard Seth Rogen in interviews, like, he's been rumored to be the new Ray Stantz in a reboot of Ghostbusters back in, like, 2013 and stuff like that. And he's like, I've never heard of this. Yes, I want to do to it, man. I have full faith in him. But I gotta ask the question: which Toxic Avenger movie did you watch? Because there's like 5 of them.
I was only fortunate to see the first one, and I turned the TV off after that. And I said, nope, I don't need to see the other one. I found out that there were other sequels after I saw the first one, and I just went, nope, I can only take in so much. I already saw this one. That's enough for me.
I would appeal to you to see the second one.
Woo.
Just because they tone it down a lot. I will say that. Like, it is not child friendly in any stretch, but it's no longer Red Band, and it's not over the top to that point. Like, there is no more shooting a dog in like the restaurant with the blind girl. Like, that scene kind of stuff doesn't happen again.
I imagine the people are listening to this podcast going, wait, shooting the dog? What? Wait, what are you talking about?
Sorry, I should give
Just go back to the part where you were talking about Toxic Avengers, people. So,
there's puppetry in it, trust me.
Yeah. So,
on another topic of another example of an IP that was like an adult movie that was turned into a cartoon. What I have to mention straight away is Kevin Smith with Clerks.
Oh.
Because Clerks, which as you know is a story about Jan and Silent Bob outside the front of deli and stuff like that, like Quick Stop.
Exactly. Yeah.
As drug dealers, they Miramax approached them to make a pilot for a cartoon, and they did produce a 6-episode pilot. And Kevin Smith was there going like, you want me to make a kids show based around 2 stoner drug dealers? Okay, what do you want me to leave in?
Well, I mean, of course, with Kevin Smith and his line of work within feature films, obviously one could imagine that, hey, we want to make a cartoon based on your characters from this R-rated comedy. One would tend to go, you want to make a kids cartoon based on these characters from my R-rated comedy? Like, yes, I'm pretty sure one of them would go.
Where he snaps his neck because he sucks his own dick, and I'm going like, okay.
I'm pretty sure he would have. I mean, I'm pretty sure he would have gone, you're not familiar with my work, are you?
Pretty much, but that was the early days of him as an upcoming writer as well, so everyone was pitching anything to him, and he was just saying, yes, maybe I can do it.
Right. Wow, I actually forgot what topic we were talking about. Okay, yes, we were talking about... we kind of segued into this, which was great.
I'm sorry, the rabbit hole was right here.
That's fine. So, going back to the topic on the style of puppetry that we do, that's, with cartoons and animation, that it has an audience, geared towards preschool children, Saturday morning programming, teenagers, and as well as adults. I strongly believe that this style of puppetry that we do, it can, there can be some for, preschoolers. There can be some for, like, Saturday morning. I strongly believe that it can do a lot more for an adult-rated audience. Because, here in the States...
100% on that.
Yeah, because, here in the States, we rarely have puppet shows that are geared towards an adult audience. Although there was one... well, still on to this day, called Crank Yankers on Comedy Central. That's more of an adult type of show that has puppets in it. But I just wish that the style of puppetry that we do, I just wish that it was given a chance to just show that we're not only meant for little kids. We all.
It's not so much a factor of. I'll just say it a different way. I love the idea that because we just listed a heap of examples like Meet the Feebles and everything like that in between, but the chance has been given. No one wishes to continue exploring it because everyone's at a point of playing it safe, and I think it just comes down to the fact that someone needs to present the right story that people want to see. Like, one of the things. Like, I'll tell you a very honest thing. Happy Time Murders, I still haven't seen yet.
Oh.
And the reason why I didn't see it was actually from the trailer. Because I was very interested, because the first time I ever heard about that movie being made was back when Jason Segel first made the movie with the Muppets.
Right.
And they were talking about other productions that Jim Henson Company wanted to do, and Brian Henson's project of Happy Time Murders came up. And different casts, and from concept artwork for it, it looked very dark, very beautiful noir. And when I saw the trailer for the movie, it was very much, as you said yourself, centered on the comedy style they wanted to go for. And it kind of let me down a little bit when I saw that, because what I wanted to see from that first pitch that I saw like 5 years earlier, it wasn't what I wanted, so my expectations kind of curved, and I just missed it in cinemas. It was just one of those things I missed out on, and I still haven't made time to go back and watch it yet.
Well, allow me to give my 2 cents on this one, because
Sure.
For close friends of mine, they know how much of a puppet geek I am, and we all went to go see Happy Time Murders after I shared the trailer. Much like you, I was definitely expecting like a darker, more film noir detective story with puppets and humans in this. Honestly, for Brian Henson to direct this kind of movie, I give him full respect. I was behind this movie 100%. I came across the artwork when I was in high school, and I thought, wow, an R-rated comedy with I'm gonna say it, Muppet style puppets. I thought that was really, really cool, and the design of these puppets looked so incredible. It really did feel like it was gonna be a dark comedy, and I was all for it. But then when they showed the trailer for it, I'll admit I laughed out loud, mainly because there were puppets on the screen and they were doing something completely different, which is always a good thing. It's always good to have these kind of puppets just do something that's completely out of that realm. And when I say out of the realm, I mean out of the realm of showcasing that they're only meant for preschool shows and variety shows that they all sing and dance and stuff like that. And when I saw the film, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it overall. I thought everybody did a good job with the puppetry and the green screen effects. There's amazing green screen work that they did. They filmed out in the open, and they used green screens. So, the magic with that was incredible. In terms of story, I really did feel like there was more to say. Brian Henson himself said that this movie would have been 2 hours if given what he set out to do. And
That's the thing, is that from all those pictures and all the things, because I think one of the best ways to find the archive for it is, I think it was beyond the trailers. He did actually a full video talking about this idea that Brian Henson wanted to do, and different actors attached to it, everything. I can't remember I think it was Kate Hyde or something like that. I can't remember, but there was another attached person to play what was McCartney's role in the end. So much of the character and the humor that came with the different casting has evolved the film over time. And as you know yourself, is that when when pitch gets rejected, you go back and you rework it, you try another pitch. So I believe after 10 years of him trying to get this movie out, there is something else to it. There was a lot more that was on the cutting room floor. So, I don't know, just one of the biggest stigmas, going to the full circle of what we're talking about with the idea that puppetry is for kids, the worst thing that is distinct that needs to be clarified for a lot of people, especially with animation, puppetry, whatever your style is, they are art forms, and it's a matter of what story you want to tell with that art.
Exactly.
And that is the thing that puppetry falls into a lot, because people think, oh, puppets mean kids. It's like, no, puppets are just the tools used to tell a kid's story. If you want to tell a different story, they can do that too. And that's why it's very interesting when you go to different cultures, especially like Japan, where animation for manga and anime and stuff like that, there's all ages. And you've just got to really look to see what the content is before you start watching. Because people tell you that animation is just for kids, and suddenly they're throwing watching Evangelion. That's a whole different kind of show. That is not for kids, no. Even from episode 1, you would not say that's for kids. But no matter how many times shows like that come out, and they're not just isolated things, people still go back and say, oh, it's a kids movie because it's animated. I mean, it just baffles me sometimes when people are just narrow-minded, that kind of stuff. And it's an art form. It's not a storytelling. It's a storytelling tool. It's not the story because.
No, I agree with you on that one. And, allow me to just preface this. Even though, and I'm going to use Happy Time as an example again for this one. The puppets in Happy Time, they looked amazing. Like every single one of them. You could tell that, there was hard work into building all these characters. And you can have great characters in a film. But if you don't have a good story that carries along with these characters, you just got pretty plush, fluffy actors up on screen.
100% razzle dazzle. It's the story of life.
Exactly. And someone actually sent me a while back. They actually sent me the first draft of Happy Time, and I was able to read through this in one day. Yeah, I was able to sit through it, read through it in one day, and in the back of my head, I'm screaming, "Why didn't you do it like this?" I'm picturing it in my head. It would have looked amazing. Like a.
There are so many times where things like that are cut out, and you think, "Oh, that would have been a good original vision." I mean, there's other ones like I think it's a podcast called The Book Was Better, and they talk about a lot of films like that. And Roger Rabbit, holy hell, the book is so different from that. Like the notion that Who Framed Roger Rabbit was actually who killed Roger Rabbit, because Roger Rabbit was the victim in the movie originally.
Whoa.
And that's just great. Did you ever know that?
I did not. I only saw from the title alone, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I saw the whole movie. I understood the story. I'm like, this cartoon rabbit was framed for murder. And now I'm hearing that the original book, he was actually murdered himself.
Well, this is the thing, and it goes into a lot of the sublore that the writer wrote for the story, is that in the universe for like cartoons and marine cartoons and the rest of it, if he had a thing where the fridge would fall on Roger Rabbit's head and he did his own stunts, when they say that he did his own stunts, he actually made a clone of himself of a second double, and the double would get the damage. And it's a quick clone kind of scenario of like the damage will happen and then he'll just deteriorate over time. And then the actual cartoon character will then do all the rest of his talking lines. And the thing that was really interesting about the book was Roger Rabbit was killed, and the character that is Eddie Valiant runs into what is Roger Rabbit's clone, his stunt double, like he created, which he put more energy into creating, so it actually had a personality as well. Pardon my throat. And it got to the point where he was actually a detective with a clone trying to solve how the rabbit actually did die, because he knew his death was coming, and he made a clone to avenge his death.
I may need to get this book. Because just here.
There's videos on YouTube that actually talk about it, and they do like a comparison from the book to the movie, and it's amazing how many stories get revamped like that. Like Jurassic Park is another good example of that, because some of the scenes from the book that never reached the film were then used in other feature films of the franchise, like Jurassic Park 3 with the pterodactyls attacking them. That's all from the first book.
Wow. This is insightful, because I did not know that after all these years. I did not know that. Professor Toby, everybody.
Oh, good daddy.
Okay. So we definitely gave a positive rant on puppets being used for puppets in film and television, and how that style of puppetry definitely can do a lot more if given the right story. Correct?
Pretty much, it's a beautiful art form, and the more scripts and more stories you give it, the more it can develop and grow. I think that is the truth, because there are some fantastic stuff, but yeah, I wish there was something that was set for my demographic first, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Best way I can describe it.
Oh, yeah. Not...
It's been a long time since we've had things like Rick the Bunny, and I kind of miss that kind of, like, opening, that kind of late night kind of variety kind of thing. I am jealous of America right now because I can't watch Barbarian and Troll. I genuinely want to see that show. I want to see, because that looks so good from the stuff I've seen so far.
No spoilers for Toby, everybody. If those who have seen the Barbarian and the Troll, no spoilers for him, please. He has yet to see it. But I'll give you my honest thoughts on it. It is definitely the show that Nickelodeon needs right now, because that, going back to what we were talking about before, we rarely see any puppet shows on television networks. I mean, oftentimes you'll get one every once in a blue moon, but after that once in a blue moon, it's erased. Nobody even bothers to do another puppet show unless it's for PBS or for children's media. Overall, the Barbarian and the Troll, and I've only seen 3 episodes. I'm looking forward to seeing the 4th episode coming out this Friday. It is amazing. Absolutely amazing puppetry. Great story, which we were talking about. You got great characters. You got a good story. Put them together. You got something incredible. All the puppeteers in there, Alan Trapman, Drew Massey, Colleen Smith, everybody there, they're doing an incredible job. Spencer Grammer, who we know from Rick and Morty, she plays Brendar, the Barbarian. She does an incredible job as well. And the whole show is filmed in Vancouver. The whole show is filmed in Vancouver, Canada. And for these people to film this incredible show while in the mix of this worldwide pandemic that we're in right now, God bless them.
I'm really hoping to get more puppet shows coming out from the pandemic, because you're only having the puppets seen on the screens like that. There's a lot more you can do to have below the frame kind of people wearing the PPE and stuff like that.
I've seen pictures of when they were filming the Barbarian and the Troll. Of course, everybody was wearing masks. They had PPEs, but again, for these people to go out there and film this incredible show, it's, again, God bless them. God bless them. God bless them for doing that. Nickelodeon, you better not screw them over. You better not, because Netflix did that with Age of Resistance. Left it on a cliffhanger.
I'm still gutted and baffled by the fact that they cancelled that show the day after they won awards with it.
I'm still pissed off about that. And everybody did such an amazing job with the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance. I mean, that for me, I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of Game of Thrones. I'm not a fan of wizards and stuff like that. But the Dark Crystal, as soon as I saw the first episode leading up to episode 8, I said out loud, this is my Game of Thrones right here. And Netflix had to go ahead and pull the plug. the Dark Age of...
We had a watch party of that for me with a few friends of mine that puppet fans as well, and we was like, we gotta have a watch party. So we all went to my friend Gwen's house, who's Poison Peach on TikTok. She's a fantastic prop builder, and she loves Brian Shrouds and all that, the the art style of Dark Crystal, Labyrinth, and all the rest of it, and we all just went to her place and just had an absolute geek out. And I still remember the face she gave when Deet met one of the fizz geeks, and she patted it and it rolled over, showing it had 4 feet. I still remember everyone just going like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah.
One just geeked out, going like, "It has 4 feet. Look how cute it is. It's like 1-1."
Yeah.
Oh my god, so much went into that series, and I loved how much it just built up. And I've not read the comics for Dark Crystal, and it's something I want to rectify so badly right now, just to get more. But that show did so much with so little time, and I wish they got more time.
No, absolutely. I was ready for season 2. I was hoping, what are they gonna do? They got the I forget the name of the soldiers that from the first movie. The Gartham soldiers.
Yeah.
I saw that they had the Gartham. They show Garthams, and then it cuts to black. I'm like, oh man, here we go, season 2. I think I know exactly what's gonna happen now. And then no, we're canceling it. What? Come on, man. Another puppet show gone down, man. Come on.
I hope they get those kind of shows again soon.
You and me both. So, again, we went on an amazing rant. A positive rant, mind you. For those that are listening to this, those that just caught up to this podcast, definitely go back to the beginning and you'll find out what we're talking about here. So, going back onto the topic of... 2 topics here. One, favorite. Hold on. Actually, this is for the very end. Here we go. So, everything that we're talking about here with characters and stories. Of course, much of your videos. There's replicas of Muppets, as well as. You mentioned you have a replica of Kermit, as well as you have a replica of Rolf the dog, which is incredible. But you also have other characters as well. You have a monster, and you have a Fraggle, which I mentioned earlier. I think you have other characters on there as well. I can't remember, to be honest. Sorry. But with...
I've got a slew of puppets I play with, because, like I said, I started with puppetry through cosplay, some of that, to implement myself to creating and just making stuff for that. So, amongst my replicas of Jim Henson-inspired characters like Kermit the Frog, Rolf the dog, I also have Oscar the Grouch, because one of the things I did with cosplay is that there's one video on TikTok showing it, but I actually do Bruno the Trash Man as a cool costume, and I carry Oscar the Grouch in a trash can that's all made with all harness rigs and all that for me to do it. So I do the roaming dual character. And that's a set of things I do there. I'm trying to actually build something for Oscar the Grouch right now so I can do more TikToks with him. But I have to really think about what I want to do with him on TikTok, because I don't want to alter his character, if that makes sense. Like, I don't want to make it, I'm playing with the character so I get to say what he does. It's that thing of like just safeguarding who sees it kind of thing.
Of course. But I believe with the monster puppet you have, like a...
Clyde.
I think it's purple with a green nose, and you also have a Fraggle as well. Do you think you could talk about how you came up with those 2 characters?
Well, with the Fraggles, though I do have Fraggles that are very much similar to the Jim Henson, they're all original design characters. I'll talk about them quickly first, because I'm a 5-year married man. I was very fortunate that my wife, my girlfriend at the time, was very interested in all the things that I was interested in, and she had never seen Fraggle Rock, so I got her to watch a few episodes. She loved it and marathoned the entire show. She absolutely loves Junior Gorg. She wants to build that as a costume as well. But when we got engaged and I proposed to her, and she's saying, like, what do you want at the wedding? What do you want at the wedding? I turned around and said to her, I want puppets. Because the funny joke is that when I took my Whatnot puppet, Alan, to a convention, that's how I met my girlfriend at the time, my wife now. that is literally how I met her, because she saw me walking past with a puppet and said, "Where did you get him?" And we just started talking. That's how I met my wife. So puppetry is my wingman. But getting back to our wedding, she said, "Okay, you want puppets? What do you want?" And because she had just finished watching a marathon of Fraggle Rock, I said Fraggles. So that was done. So what we did was I talked to a friend of mine, John, who's JW Wicked Puppetry. He had a patent for a basic Fraggle. I said to him, "Hey, can you make me a heap of Fraggles for a wedding?" And he goes, "What do you have in mind?" He goes, "Yes, we can do this. Give me a window of time and work it out." And so we did. So all the puppets that I had at my wedding were designed by the groomsmen. So we had 8 of them all up. So the bride, groom, and 3 groomsmen and 3 bridesmaids. And what we did was everyone had an influence saying, "What do we want on that said puppet? What do you want? Do you want a green head? Do you want this person's head? Do you want this, that, and that?" And it just became this evolution of like, okay, here are 8 characters, please make them. And he brought them over to Australia 2 by 2. And the character Fraggle I mostly use, which is the one that as it looks like a replica of Wembley, is my character Bronk. And he was actually the groomsman Fraggle, which is the main character I have for a lot of my stuff. I did my recent Easter video with him doing an Easter egg hunt. That is essentially the Fraggle that I got married with.
Wow.
Another puppet I have, which is another Fraggle that I use commonly on my page, my content, is Gimlet. And Gimlet is a gift I was given by that said puppeteer builder, John. And he literally had offcuts and all this leftover stuff after making the 8 Fraggles for us. And he put in the stowaway into this last box. It was this baby Fraggle. And we freaked out the first thing, like, we didn't buy this one. This is not one of ours. And we contacted him saying that, was this meant to be someone else and all the rest of it? And it was actually a wedding gift for us. So Gimlet is literally a child of our wedding. And I love playing around with his character. I love that me and my wife named him Gimlet after a tree that actually was made to Australia based on when we had a road trip with said puppet. And we've had this puppet in this. For some unknown reason, we took puppets down south with us when we went camping, something like that, to visit a few friends. And I had the puppet in the car with me in the passenger seat of the car while my wife was driving. And we're just jamming out, I'm lip syncing with the music that's playing in the car. And there's a truck, semi, going down the other way, sees the puppet, and we see his eyes just go, "What the crap?" And he almost veered off the road because he was distracted by the puppet. And we're going like, "Okay, put him away now."
Oh my god. Oh.
So yeah, that was an interesting day, and one of the trees that was on the road was a gimlet, so we actually named the puppet after that. I have used other puppets from the wedding on my channel because everyone who had a puppet made for them got to keep said puppet.
Oh.
If they wanted to, they could pay the money to make it, and they could purchase their own custom Fraggle puppet for them. And my groomsmen pretty much said yes, and they just dove at all 3 of them. We still have 4 puppets left from that wedding, not including Gim, which is the 5th one. So every so often, if I need a different character, I'll pull one of them out. I mean, there's one I have called Blossom, which is one of the bridesmaids Fraggles, and I made that character gender fluid because whoever puppeteers it has a different personality for it. It's very, not blank, but it has a shared personality between different sexes based on performer. So Blossom's very gender fluid in that regard. And I love playing with that character as well because it's a very, like, bulbous kind of Fraggle. It's very plump and a very derp face. Like, "Hello, it's you." And that's one of those fun personalities I love. And one of my favorite videos I did with that one was actually one with a quote from Gabriel Iglesias with the magical sound of being growled by a cop. And I used Blossom and Bronk to simulate the whole thing of like, "I can bake this," when it's like, "Woo!" You pull over for drinking.
Oh yeah, I remember seeing that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's Blossom. And there's another one I have, which is my wife's Fraggle, which is Pippin, which is one that's made to look like red, but it actually has a different shaped sculpt to the head, so it actually is more like Gobo, but it still has the pigtails, but it's orange with yellow blue from the top, and it
Mm.
And it's a very tall Fraggle compared to mine. It has a longer neck and everything like that, so it's very, not awkward to puppeteer, but it's very hard when sitting down to really get the full body's movement. And yeah, that's why I use every so often if I need a female voice, if that makes sense, for TikTok videos. But it's very rarely I use that one because it's not personally mine, if that makes sense.
No, of course. I'm still in awe with your wedding that you guys had Fraggle puppets for for the wedding. Just hearing it's very sweet, and it's very, that kind of shows puppets can bring people together,
Well, the thing for me is that I loved it because it was very central to us, because, like I said, a puppet was my wingman that got me hooked up with my girlfriend at the time, with the girl I met at a con that was in a Stargate costume. But for me, it's a thing of like, when we had our wedding plan, we said we don't want to do this traditionally, we want to represent who we are and why we love each other, so we had a lot of things of pop culture at our wedding. And with the Fraggles and start of our wedding, I actually posted a video up on, I think it was the 26th of March. I actually posted up a video that was a little compilation of all the photos of the behind the scenes of the photos I got from John when he made the puppets, as well as a little talk about how I had him at the wedding. So there is that shows that a little bit there, and that was a video I posted up for our 5-year wedding anniversary. So that's there if you want to have a look at that and see a bit more photos. But yeah, it was just one of those things at my wedding. We had the Bluesmobile from the Blues Brothers. We had Proton packs. We had all this kind of stuff. We had Star Wars representation and all the wedding tables. You'll love this, is that for the reception, all our wedding table, for all the people like, oh, you're at table 5, you're at table 6 for the reception. We didn't do that. What we did, we had this massive painting made up of a universe galaxy of all random planets. And then we named each planet, and that was the name of the table. And it was every planet represented a different sci-fi that we liked. So there was Planet X from Duck Dodgers. There was Vulcan from Star Trek. You had all these different ones there. And then Cybertron from Transformers. One of the ones they had, one of the planets on that table was Melmac.
Of course! Because who wouldn't want to be on Melmac for the wedding?
Who wouldn't want to have a party at the table with Melmac and Alf? And Gordon, you ever heard of the word name Gordon Shumway?
Of course! I am Gordon Shumway. And plus, Melmac, that's the only planet where we could have cats for the main course! Ha! Ha!
Yes!
Okay, I'm gonna go now. I'll let this guy finish up. Okay, thank you, Alf. Thank you. You mentioned Melmac. I had to do that. I had to.
And that's one of the things that was the other thing I loved about the 80s, especially because there was 80s and 90s, there was so much experimentation with comedy on TV. Because you would never do this today of having ongoing shows like that. But we had Simpsons come out as a cartoon for adults. You had Alf as a sitcom with puppets, and then you had Jim Henson say "Hold my beer," and then make dinosaurs.
Yep. Yeah.
All experimentation going into sitcoms and the family dynamic comedy variety show and stuff like that, all coming out in the same span of 6 years.
No,
they're going like, God damn, I want more of that.
You want more? Too bad. We're not doing any more.
No, I have to wait for the Barbarian to be released in other countries.
But again, that idea for your wedding, that's, to represent, what you guys.
I gotta get this back on track because again we're rambling again. Sorry.
That's okay.
Getting to the monster puppets now. My main one, which mentions the purple one, his name is Clyde, and he's a puppet I actually bought. I sadly can't say that I designed him, but I'm actually going to have to get him rebuilt in ways more for me soon. But he was a puppet I found that was made in South America, and I found on an eBay auction. And I was there going I need him. I saw him, and I had 3 characters for him instantly just into my head, and I just had to make one of them exist. So again, did the finagling of beating the shipping train, stuff like that, got him home. This is back in 2013 I got him. And I have loved playing with him so much because he was my second sack puppet, if that makes sense. So like the sack body with the live hands, all that. He's my second puppet I had with that kind of body, but he was one that was more built for monitor filming because his color of the fabric was better, more obliging for a camera. Like it wouldn't hide in the background because it was too crushing the blacks. And Clyde has gone through so many iterations of his character to who he is now, because my first version of him was like the old-timey prospector in the Old West. Or like the old, hey, that's a story from an old time. Like, that was his old voice when I first got him, and he's only evolved his town back here, he's just having some fun. He just has that kind of little teasing kind of nation about him now.
I love hearing about, hearing the evolution of how you started creating your characters to where they're standing on now.
Well, that is what I really have only had for exploring puppetry for me, is that because there aren't any workshops, there aren't any improv classes for puppetry where you can learn monitor puppetry. And funny thing, you were mentioning Brett earlier from Larrikin, I never tried monitor puppetry until I met him in person. And I had to fly to the other side of the country to actually make that connection. And the stuff that we filmed that went up on his page on Facebook is still my favorite things, because I had Clyde interacting with Trog, and it was just so silly because we're just improv bouncing back and forth, and I'm genuinely trying to keep my head down low watching the monitor and can't remember which hand's which. And I am so glad that I discovered TikTok, because I've managed to refine that so much since then.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, that is definitely one good way to practice. And if you ever consider, working in front of a monitor, definitely try to find a monitor that, doesn't work, either a computer screen or a regular TV monitor. Find a camera or use your phone. There's like various ways to connect your phone to your TV, so you can definitely do that style of puppets. But right before we let you go, a few more things on here. So along with all the things that you've done with this style of puppetry, what goals do you see yourself doing with this, either now or in a few years' time?
For me with puppetry, I would, unlike yourself, I will say this to you, Marcelo, you have a fantastic cast of characters that you make to your collection and your series. I don't see myself doing that as much, if that makes sense. Because though I love puppetry to the point of I love exploring new characters, I love creating new characters, I'm not the one who's a story writer, if that makes sense. Like, I'm very much a cast member, not a creative body of the investor. So, I'm one of the second tier performers, if you can call it to that point, the way I see myself. Because though I can create characters and build stories, I'm not a world builder to that extent.
Well, that definitely works out too, because, for in that kind of situation, if anyone's ever looking for other performers to be casted in, you could definitely join in and enjoy and be a part of the collaborative process on creating characters.
And that's where I see myself more. It's just the idea that if you have I want to put myself out into improv classes like that and actually present myself as a puppeteer properly in Australia, because sadly we don't get as many film productions over here, but I've got to put myself out there now and actually say, yes, there is a puppeteer here. If you want puppets for a production, let me know. So that's where I'm at a point in that regard. I actually am, though, saying that I am trying to design 2 puppets for a sketch I want to do for TikTok, involving more Dungeons and Dragons and fantasy things.
All right.
And the funny thing is that I came up with this idea for 2 goblin characters to interact with things like Quincy's Tavern and all the rest of those kind of ones that I wanted to do for so long. And the minute I named the characters, the same day I named these characters, Not going to be always that thing of like, oh, you're copying this. Like, no. We're all in the same playhouse.
Yeah, exactly. And plus, I going back to Brett, there have been talks about, that puppetry isn't as popular in Australia, and I really hope that it does gain more popularity now than it is right now. I mean, I'll just say this. I mean, over in Australia, you guys got a purple puppet doing stand-up comedy, for crying out loud. You know what I'm saying?
Oh god, I am so looking forward to, because Randy's actually touring right now through Australia, and I've got like 2 weeks, and he'll be down in my town in Perth. I'll get to see him again, so I'm so looking forward to his show.
No, yeah, I mean, but you know what I'm talking about, right? Like, Australia, puppetry is not as big over there. You guys got a stand-up comic, and he's a puppet. He's a purple puppet opening up a comedy gala in a beautiful big theater. I'm like, you're telling me that's not a man? If that doesn't gain popularity, I don't know what does.
Oh, we need more people with his energy, 100%.
Yes, especially with the power of Heath MacGyver. He's phenomenal. And
I've only met the guy once, Heath, and honestly, I wish I could talk to him more often. But then again, I rather have that star notoriety for him. I don't need to be his friend. If that makes sense.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. I mean, I was fortunate enough to have actually go to a comedy show where I actually got to see Randy, and I mean, I've messaged Heath MacGyver a few times on Instagram. I told him that one time I couldn't go to a show because I was planning to go with a friend. He couldn't make it for personal reasons, which I understood. And I messaged him and I said, listen, I really wanted to see the show, but I can't tonight, which is, I was really looking forward to it. He messages me back 2 minutes later saying, oh, you want me to put you on the guest list for tomorrow? I was like, wait, what? What? You could do that? I was like, yeah. I'm like, all right, sure. And I get there. I knew this wasn't going to happen. I mean, for me, I knew that this wasn't going to happen. I had a fan drawing of Randy that I drew, and I brought one of my puppets with me because I was taking pictures of one of my puppet characters going to see Randy. After the show was done, I went up to one of the bouncers, and I asked if I could see Heath MacGyver, and they said, who? I'm like, Randy. The puppet that was just on stage. I'm a friend of his. He was like, oh yeah, sure, come on. I'm like, okay, this is working. And I'm waiting out front, and as soon as he comes out the curtain, he sees me. He's like, hey, Marcelo, glad to see you. Glad that you were able to finally make it to the show. How'd you like it? I'm like, I enjoyed it very much, and I gave him the drawing. We sat down. We got to talking a little bit on puppetry and the craft of it. He was actually a fiend from a show called Me and My Monsters that I used to watch, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I forgot about Fiend. That monster that I got to perform." And he was interacting with one of my puppets. He was like, "What? You want to meet Randy?" I'm like, "Yes, I'd love to meet Randy." And we got a couple of pictures. This was one thing that I never got on tape. After we got a picture, I just went, there was a time when life was simple. And Randy started singing.
Yes.
I just went, there was a time. And Randy started going, when life was simple. Two friends, best friends. I'm like, what is happening right now?
Best friend going hand in hand in the meadow.
Yeah, beautiful singing voice. It's just amazing. But
I will say, it's like 100% too. He is an absolute beast as a puppeteer. Like the fact of you consider how long his show goes for.
Oh yeah.
There's no intermission, and he's there sometimes what his point out that if he goes to a random show and he hasn't got a set with him, he'll grab an iron shows. And he did like an hour and a half set as the character, no stopping, no nothing, and just kept firing energy for days. And then afterwards, he stayed back and signed autographs and just posted photos for people who came to his show. And all the while, still puppeteering, still maintaining the character, and just dropping to a knee, hand up as high as he could, getting the pose, moving forward, recording personal videos, trolling people. He did everything. I'm just there going like, dude, where's the battery going, you?
Right there, that's dedication. That is heavy dedication, not only to the art form, but also being committed into character as well. That's, and again, I really hope that style of puppetry gains a little bit more popularity in Australia. I mean, for you and Brett, and I'm definitely sure many others in Australia.
Well, there is a love of classic puppetry shows like that, because one of the other puppeteers that is famous in Australia is Jamie Dunn, and he's known for doing a character called Aggro. He used to do a morning kids show called Cartoon Connection back when I was a kid, and because of blooper reels of him and outtakes from that show where he got a bit too adult and mature for his character, a lot of those went on YouTube and got a viral sensation, and he was making a resurgence back 2 years ago, and he is very, very much a powerhouse. Like, he's a radio talks person on the East Coast as well, and he was scheduled to do a live tour stuff like that with Aggro that was going around all the states, and sad to say, this show had to be cancelled due to the pandemic.
Man.
It was that thing of like the resurgence for a love of puppetry in Australia was happening, and then life happened.
Right.
So we're very lucky in Australia. Don't get me wrong. We've had a very light undergoing of what's going on compared to other countries. But yeah, it's one of those things of like everyone is still nervous to try and start something in case something goes sideways. It's that the fear of investment, if that makes sense.
I can understand that. And lastly, and this is something I always ask my fellow guests, because on the subject of Muppet fans talking, although we did touch upon topics on Muppets and everything else puppet related.
Go on.
Yes. What is your most favorite Muppet moment? Like anything where you saw, like, just spitballing here, Muppets on television, or a plush toy, or like anything that really drew you into the world of the Muppets, and why?
Okay, do you want to make it just Muppets in particular, or just puppet shows in general?
With this one, you know what? For the sake of this episode tonight, let's do both.
Okay, I'll answer, because there's one scene of a Puppets that made me genuinely just lose my mind of how they did it, and just like good comedy writing. Because in Australia there was, in I want to say 94, there was a series called Ferals, and it was 4 feral animal puppets that lived in a shed in the back of a house that constantly fought with the person who owned the house. And you had a rat, a cat, a dog, and a rabbit. So they're all feral animals, all wild, and think of like, you can't evict us because we're the ferals, you can't stop us. It was very much grunge puppetry. So, very cool show. They did 2 seasons, they did a follow-up show, which was like 5 minutes in between a couple shows, called Feral TV. And the idea behind it was, after they got evicted from the shed, they went into the sewers, found a network TV station's main cable hub, hacked the signal, and made a pirate TV station called Feral TV. So they would literally alligator clip onto the main circuit breaker, and then film and interrupt the official segments to film their own shows, which is a parody of everything else.
Wow.
It was a fantastic concept, and it's just one of those things of, I wish they kept pursuing these things, because they were great shows for like older kids, that makes sense, because it wasn't for young kids. Like, it was very violent slapstick, like Wilkins coffee levels of, hey, how can we hurt each other? It was that kind of destructive energy. It was very much young must go through and save Anna Lynn before she gets run over by the train coming. And it's all done from the perspective of the film production filming this scene, and things going wrong as they try to film it. And that's the premise of this sketch. And the premise is that he has to go through a door to get to the train, the tunnel where the train line is, to rescue the girl. And all the while through, he can't open the door because it's dead bolted or something has happened to it. And he's just trying his hardest to burst through a door that won't open. Spoiler alert, the door wasn't locked, it was just opened the other way. He was pushing the
Oh.
thing I love is the level of destructive energy they tried to do. Of like, you just had this sequence of him just charging and just sliding off, falling off over and over again. And there's a point, because the character doing it is the Radis. He's an absolute bully leader kind of character. So he's doing anything he can to instigate doing it right, and he actually hates the person who is the cat, who is the one tied to the tracks. And the joke was that I shouldn't be saving you, I should be driving the train. Is the line he has to start the premise.
Oh.
And one line I've always loved from that cartoon, getting full circle to the backstory, and the guy that is the Dick Dastardly, like, I am tying the train tracks. They grabbed the dog that was playing that character, had him like a battering ram, and the line was, this should work. Darren's head's thicker than 2 short planks, and that door's only 1 short plank. Charge! And they just ram him through the door, get him stuck, and he's just like a head floating out of a door frame.
Oh my.
Always makes me laugh. I'll have to find it online and link it to you later. It just always tickled me so much as a scene, because it just kept going and getting worse.
The formula for doing these kind of puppet shows, folks. Good story, characters, risks, and also a little bit of an edge.
And if, like you were saying before, like you're a huge fan of Roger Rabbit, you have to look at that show of Feral TV like you would maroon cartoons of him looking back at the footage going, no, wait till it gets to his feet, then hit him with a boulder. It's very much that kind of behind the scenes of how films are filmed. And it's just a fantastic parody of that time of just like live studio performances. It's, oh my god, I loved it so much.
Amazing. Well, my friends, listeners, this brings us down to the end of another one. But before we go, I would definitely like to thank my friend Toby for joining me today on this new episode of Muppet Fans Talking. Toby, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for making time for me. And sorry it was so sporadic all over the place.
Again, this kind of podcast is made for that, because you guys have so many stories to share, and everybody needs to hear it. One of the main reasons why I'm doing this. So, Toby, again, thank you so very much for joining me.
You're very welcome, Marcelo. I hope to do it again sometime.
Absolutely. And everybody listening, thank you so much for joining me on Muppet Fans Talking. We'll see you next time.